My name is Lily Havey. I also have a Japanese name, which is Yuriko Nakai. And already there's a kind of duality in my life. There's the American side and the Japanese side. I was born in Los Angeles and I'm 92 years old. I'm the child of immigrants, and my mother and father came from Japan. My mother was actually the child of a line of Buddhist priests, and my father came from a line of farmers, and so they were really a disparate kind of couple. My mother worked after she had raised her children, not her children, but her siblings, because her mother died when she was 12 years old. And she went to the city, probably in Hiroshima, to work and saw pictures of men that were looking for brides in Japan to go to America to get married. My father had sent 2 pictures, and so she chose him because he was so dapper. He was in Hawaii with this wonderful hat and squatting among these pineapples. And she thought that would be wonderful. And so she replied, and he actually came to Japan and they got married here. They went to Yokohama. She borrowed some Western clothes. Why not a Japanese kimono? I don't know. And they got married. And on the shore of leaving, he said, "Oops, I only have enough money for 1 ticket. And I will go back and I will send you enough money to come." And so she was abandoned in Yokohama and found a job in a telegraph office. And she worked for a year and made enough money to come to the United States. And so already there was this idea of, well, shikata ga nai, which is, well, that's how life is and it can't be helped. Or gaman, which is suck it up or just do the best that I can. And she did that. And so she came and they found a little house in Los Angeles. And she, however, had more aspirations than he did and went to sewing school called the Pacific Sewing School and learned dressmaking and became a seamstress, while my father really struggled. For one thing, he was an alcoholic and he would come home often drunk. He and my mother really didn't know English very well, and so he got jobs gardening and cooking and whatever he could as an immigrant to the US. And she, however, went to English school, night classes, and I remember my father saying, "Why are you doing that?" And he actually took some of the things that she had bought and threw them in the fire. He said, "Wives don't need this." Even though they were in America, he was still carrying around the tenets, the laws of Japan with him. And so she, however, persevered, and she started off making little handkerchiefs. And I have 1 or 2 or 3. And she sold them. She went from door to door selling handkerchiefs to make a living. My life from that point, when I was 7, took on a fairly regular rhythm. It was school for 5 days, and then Saturday I went to Japanese school. One day, a woman came over to my mother and she said, dragging me along, and said, "Yuriko needs piano lessons." And I looked at her and she said, "Well, you know, why is this?" She said, well, you were playing the piano at my house, and I think you have talent. And so lo and behold, my mother believed her, and this huge upright piano appeared. I don't know how she could afford this. And it was kind of fun. The fun part was the piano. The downside was she had a little timer of some kind and said, okay, after school, half an hour at the piano. And so while I heard my playmates playing outside, I was there learning, scales and arpeggios and piano. And I remember the very first recital too. It must have been a half a year later. I still have the score to that. A very simple piece called The Chase. And I started and I forgot the second page. I couldn't remember. The teacher said, okay, start over. And so I started over and I couldn't get beyond that second page. And so my mother, of course, was just mortified. And the teacher, Miss Wilker, said, okay, we'll do this later. And we never did. But this is my very first memory of a recital, of playing in public. And I have ever since just hated performing. Practicing was just fine, but performing was something else. Because you could forget things. And then December 7th, 1941 came, and the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And the life of my family and all the Japanese Americans just changed in an instant, changed in a day. Because I guess the day after this happened, the FBI began knocking on doors and taking the people that they considered important away. They said, come with us. I remember on the living room wall, my mother had a picture of the emperor and empress, because in Japan, they were more than just emperor and empress. They were supposedly descended from the heavens, and they were sacred. And December 8th came, and they had disappeared. And I asked my mother what happened to the pictures, and she said, I burned them. And I think she took a lot of pictures, and she took a lot of Japanese memorabilia and even some of her kimonos, and anything that connected her to Japan, she tossed and just threw away. And I know some families buried them. And then along came the evacuation, the executive order that President Roosevelt signed, which meant that any Japanese American or Japanese living within 60 miles of the West Coast would be evacuated into camps, and told us that we had 10 days to pack our bags, sell everything we had, and we would meet at a certain place. And they had these places depending on the area that you were, and just be there to go camping, really. And so I asked my mother, I said, well, what's this camp that we're going to? And she said, oh, we're going camping. Camping to me was Girl Scout, Boy Scout camping, where you went in tents and you toasted marshmallows and told ghost stories at night and had a campfire and slept in sleeping bags, and you stayed for 2 days, and you came home. The Japanese didn't have Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts at that time that I know of. And so this was really exciting. I mean, this was going to be something that, the white kids did. And so my mother packed up, and she was pretty much alone in this. I don't remember my father helping, because she didn't pack some of the things that I wish she had. But we were sent then in front of a church, and I'm sitting on my father's suitcase, and she's gone, and my brother's gone. I don't know where my father is. And I asked my mother, well, I'd really like to come with you. And she said, no, just wait here. And when she comes back, after what I think is a long time, she's carrying these oak tags with a number, and the number is 18286. And she's got 4 of them, 18286A, B, C, and D. And I asked her, what is this? And she gives me 18286D. Say, well, this is yours. And I said, well, it doesn't have my name on it. And so I started to say, I said, well, I'll put my name on it. You know, this is funny. And she says, no, the government wants just this number. And I said, well, I don't understand this. Why? And she said, oh, well, the people that in the camps can't pronounce Japanese names, so they're giving us this number. So already, before we go to camp, our identities are stripped. You know, we become numbers, like the way that the Nazis put numbers on the Jews and not their names. Except we didn't get tattooed, we just had numbers on cardboard. And so my mother tied one on, and we just waited. We went on a bus and we went to Santa Anita racetrack. And Santa Anita was one of the places where they built barracks because they had to have room. I was only 10 years old.